Well, I guess this collection behind me is what I use to dedicate to the return of this legend. God damn. He is in for a ride.
The filming Daniel.
Hey guys, it's Daniel here, back with a new review, and today I am going to take on the big challenge, even though it's not that big because I love this franchise, so of course I'm going to review this, but I am here today to review what might quite possibly be the most anticipated and most hyped spin-off show of The Walking Dead. A show that is literally like 5 years and something months in the making after this goat himself left the main series. And now we see him return to our screens once more, as well as his sword-wielding lady. I am going to be reviewing the 6-episode miniseries, The Walking Dead, The Ones Who Live. Okay, this is going to be a bit of a mountain to climb. So, without further ado, let's get started. So you might already know what the plot to The Walking Dead The Ones Who Live is, but for those of you who don't, I'll give you the brief. The Walking Dead The Ones Who Live, after the events of the main Walking Dead series, Fear the Walking Dead, and The Walking Dead World Beyond, our main man of the Walking Dead franchise himself, Rick Grimes, has returned to our screens, showing that he has been taken and held against his will by the big Civic Republic military, or the CRM for short. It's the military that's been hinted at many times throughout the franchise, and has been shown in World Beyond, and Rick has been trying to escape the CRM for many years, but has continued to fail to do so. While Michonne has been out there looking for Rick, and must find Rick and bring him back to his family, before the CRM, led by Major General Beal, comes after them. So yes guys, this is basically one of, if not the most anticipated spin-off series of the Walking Dead franchise, because we are finally here seeing the return of the GOAT of the Walking Dead franchise, as well as the legendary main character of the entire Walking Dead franchise himself, Rick Grimes. And there wasn't any words of how exciting that would be. Now, I was myself excited to see this series. I mean, at first I think it was going to be like 3 movies, but then they turned it into a mini-series, which is the one thing I was kind of worried about with this show, it being only 6 episodes and it being a mini-series. And I just felt like it wasn't enough. I felt like there was a few things that made me think that the series needed more, like maybe like 2 more episodes. So I was really worried about it being a mini-series because I was afraid that they were going to rush out a few things. But I was willing to give it a chance, and also I was just excited to see Rick back again, and to see him and Michonne reunite, which I won't say whether or not they do, although you might have to know the answer already, but I was really hoping that would be something that we would see. So, I have done my episode-by-episode analysis or thoughts on these episodes on my channel, so you can go check those out if you want some spoiler discussions on the episodes, but this is going to be a full season spoiler-free review, so hopefully I don't give away too much. But after watching the series twice now, all I have to say is this was an amazing series. Seriously, like, I think that this series was TV movie level quality, because I felt like for the most part it gave us a lot of things we wanted to see from the return of these 2 characters. And I just think that with the 6 episodes they had, at least in the first 5, They definitely had some good storytelling to really, like, take its time and develop. At least in the first 5 episodes, because we'll get to problems I have. Because I do have some flaws, I do have some things that I think they could have done better, but for the most part, I think they did most of the things that they needed to do. So, let's talk about my thoughts on The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live. So, what do I love about The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live? Well, the best thing I will say about this season are the performances. Every actor felt like they were really giving it the most they have, and many of the returning actors from the franchise feel like they're really pushing the performance to make these characters feel like they are in positions they've never been before. The biggest one that I say is the best one, of course, is, well, I think you know who I'm going to talk about. We all know who I'm about to talk about. Come on. This is the reason why I've been looking forward to seeing this series. Rick frickin' Grimes, played perfectly by Andrew Lincoln. Is it not one of the greatest things ever to see this legend back on screen again? I mean, Andrew Lincoln came back to the Walking Dead franchise, and honestly, some other YouTubers said this as well, and I couldn't agree more. He slipped right back into that role as if it was nothing, because you can tell that Andrew Lincoln really loves this character. You can tell that this is going to be a big story for Rick Grimes, and you can tell that with the time off that he's had the time to recover from like 8 years that he already spent with the franchise and the character, and he came back knowing what he's doing, and he came back, in my opinion, one of his best performances in the franchise, because Rick, I can tell, was really going through some of the hardest choices and positions he's ever gone to, especially in that first episode. Like, the first episode, he did 2 things in the opening sequence that I'm like, whoa, this guy has really, like, been through the roughness and the hell in the CRM. And again, I will not give away what those 2 things are, but those are some things that I'm pretty sure a lot of fans of The Walking Dead, especially the original comic series, will be really shocked and like, wow, they actually did it. And we get to see his journey and how he develops, because he does have his worriness, but with the heart that he feels for the Michonne character, he finds a way to keep his confidence up and really go to the strong, determined leader that he was always meant to be throughout the previous seasons of the main series. And I really loved seeing how he comes to think that maybe I'm not the man that everybody thinks I am. I've been with this group for too long, because you have to keep in mind, he has been with the CRM way longer than he's been with the group in the main series. Like, he's been with the CRM for, what, like 7, 8 or 9 years, and he was with the main group for about 3 to 4 years. So he's been with the CRM longer than he was with Daryl or Michonne or Maggie, and you can tell that all that time in the CRM has really got into his head, and he has doubts on whether or not he can actually make it out. But by the end of the series, which I won't give away, I think it was everything that Rick Grimes has been building up to, and I think it's some of his best moments ever, and I really think that Rick Grimes is the heart of this mini-series. And Andrew Lincoln, I think you deserve an award, buddy. Like, what? How come you haven't deserved an award already? Like, give this guy an Emmy already, man. Come on! This guy, he's literally a British actor, and he came into the Walking Dead franchise back in 2010 with a different kind of role. Like, he's not like been with before, because he's been known for like being in like British dramas or British comedies, but he's in an American series with a post-apocalyptic suit, so he's having to do that. And 14 years later, he has not lost his touch, and I'm really excited to see what Andrew Lincoln does next, because Rick Grimes, I'm so happy to see him again, and this is honestly some of Rick's best moments in the entire franchise to me. However, we not only have the return of Andrew Lincoln as Rick Grimes, which is already just amazing, we also have the return of Danai Gurira as Michonne, because Michonne is also a co-lead in this series, along with Andrew Lincoln. And I think Danai also did a fantastic job at slipping back into that role. In fact, she and Andrew Lincoln have honestly some of the greatest dramatic acting chops I've ever seen in a television show, because When Denai Guerrera cries, which I won't give away why, but when she cries, you feel it, okay? You feel the tears, you feel the emotions, and especially in the second episode, because there are multiple centric episodes in this season, the first one with Rick and the second one with Michonne, and I don't think that's really a spoiler because they kind of do that in the advertising, but Michonne's journey was also very rough because she says herself she'd gone through the hell to try to find Rick, and the characters that she meets are very interesting characters, and I love seeing her reflect on the life that she had before Rick, and the life that she has now that she had to leave her kids, but also reflecting on the life with her kids, and how hard it was for her to raise them without Rick by her side, and how hard it is for Michonne to make it through this world without Rick by his side. And, like, when she's interacting with different characters, and when she's giving, like, a speech and trying to give characters some courage, I think that she did a fantastic job presenting that. Denai was fantastic, and I did feel very sorry for Michonne multiple times with what she has to go through, and I think that her action sequences are some of the coolest. I mean, it's Michonne, okay? She's always known for giving best action sequences, especially with that sword. Now, one of the biggest things that you might be wondering with the show is, are we getting a reunion between Rick and Michonne? And I will not give away if they do or not, because this is a spoiler-free review, although I think you probably might have to know the answer already. But what we do get, with what our decision goes through, I think is some of the greatest scenes ever made. And that's all I'm going to say. Now, as for the other characters, besides our two main leads, a lot of the other characters are great as well. We have new characters, like we have this Nat character, who I found very endearing, and I wanted him to make it out alive. He gave some great quips and great speeches to Michonne. We also have a character in the CRM named Okafor, and I think he was also great in the series as well. I don't know the actor's name. I think he's one of the best characters in The Ones Who Live, because I could definitely see where he was coming from with him interacting with Rick and wanting him to feel the need to blend in with the CRM, but when we find out what he's really doing, it's very interesting to look at. He has a great backstory, and I think that the actor did a fantastic job of making him come off as very strong and determined, but also very sympathetic and quite likeable. But we also have some returning characters, well, mainly one. We mainly have the return of Jadis in this series. So yes, Jadis from the main Walking Dead series and the World Beyond series, Season 2, is back in this series, and I think Pollyanna McIntosh, I think that's how you pronounce her name, is doing some of her best work, because you can definitely see that this woman just, oh my god, she is so brainwashed by the CRM, and her speeches and whatever she says to characters, I was like, come on Jadis, really? But that's the point, you're supposed to feel like that. And I also loved seeing, like, different parts of her character reflecting on herself, especially from the past. Jadis, I think, was also really great. I love seeing her backstory and how she's doing with the CRM. And with what we've seen of her character from The World Beyond and the main Walking Dead, what she goes through kind of feels a bit celebration-y, I should say. And I won't give away too much, but I thought she was also really good in the series. So we have those characters that I like. Are there any more performances that I like? Well, Leslie Ann Branded, I can't say her name right, I think I got it right, but from Lucifer, she did a pretty good job as Pearl Thorne, although I'll get into her character a bit more later, but I thought she was pretty good. And I really, really liked the performance of Terry O'Quinn as the main villain and the leader of the CRN himself, Major General Beal. I think that he fit with a character like a Major General really well. I've never seen Lost, so I don't know how big of an actor or how great of an actor besides this Terry O'Quinn is, but I think he was really good as well. Although I'm not gonna lie guys, I'm still a bit torn about the way that they use the character. I mean, I didn't hate it, but I also wasn't the biggest cup of tea, and I'll get to that later on. But it still did a fantastic job at bringing this villain character to life. Now, this show was supposed to be a movie, but it turned into a series. But I will say, the visuals and the cinematography, this is honestly got to be probably the most cinematic Walking Dead series I've ever seen in a very long time. I mean, there are some shots, particularly in the first episodes, where I'm like, Okay, this is an action military soldier movie starring Andrew Lincoln as the lead. Like, they get some good shots, they have some good budget to show, a lot of things felt real, and it also expands a bit more compared to, like, the main series, because one of the problems I had with the main series is that the cinematography just kind of felt a little bit too, like, closed in and not really broad out. But here you see so many great landscape shots, so many great helicopter shots, so many great explosions and just like angles and point of views or high angle shots, just movie level, just great. And the score was also great as well because they brought in some new themes, like we got this like action theme for the CRM where they're like that was a really like intense theme to really show the pain that Rick Grimes was going through. And the emotional tracks, I think, are honestly some of their best in this franchise because it leads to some of the most tender moments in this series. And I guess that's where we'll get to next. This series puts these characters through really rough positions and it leads them to question their morals, identity and strength and thinking, can they really do what they can really do in this world? Is this new world different and do they not belong in this world? And we get to see some of the most emotional scenes that really was elevated by the acting, the score and the cinematography, and when they question their morality but still find the spirit to keep moving. I think that it's one of the most broad and cinematic feelings of happiness, sadness and brutalness ever in a Walking Dead show. So well done on Andrew, Denaya and Gimple for making those moments happen. And while the final episode I did have some problems with and I'll get to later, I will say the final scene of The Ones Who Live gave me butterflies in my stomach. It really made me feel a bit chills inside because it's something we've been wanting to see in terms of an emotional moment for like ever since Rick left the show, and I think that the final scene really kind of felt like it was really like a bit of a finale to a story, and I think that it was really well done, and it's honestly one of Rick's best moments ever in the franchise, and one of Michonne's best moments. One of the most uplifting moments in the entire franchise to me. Now, before this show came out, I was really hoping that it was going to be like just a straight up 5 out of 5, and I think it was going to be a masterpiece of a series. And overall, I think it's really great as a series for the return of these characters and a continuation of the franchise, and it helps to expand the franchise in a pretty good way. But unfortunately, guys, I do have a few issues with The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live. Not a lot, but just enough to make me go, okay, yeah, they could have wrote things a bit better. Don't kill me! In my opinion, the one thing that really stuck to my mind with this season, and I think a lot of people can have the same opinions, although some people are very divisive on this area of the series, so you're going to have to bear with me on this as I discuss my thoughts, is the writing decisions and the pacing of the final episode. Now, I did say earlier that there was a scene in the final episode that I thought was so beautiful, and yeah, the final scene of that episode, again, was very, very beautiful, but without giving away spoilers, let's also talk about everything else in that episode, because that episode did leave me a bit torn, because I like the episode, I do kind of like the episode, but I was always asking myself throughout the episode, what's happening? Is this really what's happening? Like, why are we speeding through this? Like, why is this going very quickly? Like, that's honestly like the problem that a lot of people have with the finale, and I can do agree with that as well. I felt like the finale was very rushed, okay? That episode was a bit too short, and I felt like it could have benefited from being like 20 minutes longer, or you could have made the series an episode longer or 2 episodes longer, like an 8-episode series, and I think that would have benefited it very well, because the way that they write the final episode in some cases and the pacing of that episode didn't feel like it was really like planned because maybe it was planned, but it didn't really seem like that in the long run. It felt like a bit of a studio recut instead of the actual final episode, and I hear that they filmed multiple endings for this series, so maybe that might have something to do with it, but with what we've seen from the first 5 episodes, with them taking their time, the final one just takes a bit of a turn to making it go so fast. Like, we're just gonna do all these things very quickly, and it never really felt like we had the real time to really flesh things out in the final episode. And I felt like it was part of the reason why I originally felt like a 6-episode series wouldn't work, and I felt like it was working until the final episode, because we have like the CRM, which, in my opinion, I think the CRM was doing a fantastic job proving themselves to be a bit of a threat. Although they do kind of feel a bit sidelined in some cases in the series, but for the most part, when we see them, they really do a fantastic job expanding their origin, expanding their effect on other survivors, and really feeling like it was the threat that we've been building up to throughout many of the franchise installments. And then we get to the last episode, which again I won't spoil, and then we just like, wait, that's what it was leading up to? Like, what? Like, and I know a lot of people are going to say this. With what we have with the CRM this series, this is meant to be a love story. And I get that it's meant to be a love story, but with what they do with the CRM, the final episode, I felt like it being a love story doesn't justify it. I felt like if you want to tell a love story, then do that, but leave a lot of things out of it, because they kind of forced some things in the final episode that, in my opinion, didn't really need to happen, or they rush a few things in the final episode that didn't really need to happen, just because it's a love story. I don't think that's really that big of an excuse for why these things had to go down. And 2, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, if you watch this series on its own without watching other installments in the franchise, then it wouldn't really matter that much, because it would just be on its own, and you can really catch up with what's been going on without having to watch any of the spin-offs. And I can kind of understand where you're coming from, but if you do pay attention to this show and see the reused footage from other shows, which I won't spoil, then that theory is easily debunked. Connections have been made, and I felt like this season was trying to have its cake and eat it too. And when you watch the show, you'll know what I mean, but I felt like that one of these directions you should have gone. You can't choose both. And I felt like it really showed in the final episode, because some of the characters from the first few episodes that I was really intrigued by also kind of go to crap a few times. Because we have the character of Pearl Thorne. I think the actress was good, and I haven't seen Lucifer, so I don't know this actress like in other works, but I'm guessing she had to do like an accent for this character, and I will say, I bought the accent. I thought that was really good. But the arc that they put this character through, I felt like wasn't really helping. It kind of made things worse, because she's kind of getting in the way of a few things. She makes some decisions that I wasn't particularly fond of, especially in the final episode. She was kind of interesting at first, and then later on in the series, she kind of just turns into crap. And I felt like that halfway through the series, you could have done something different with her, and I didn't really care for her too much. And I felt like she was pretty annoying. But one of the things I was very disappointed by in terms of the pacing of this series and the development they could have had and the bit of potential they could have had is our main antagonist of this series, as well as the big baddie of the CRM storyline himself, the leader of this military group, Major General Beal. Now I will say, Terry O'Quinn did a great job as the character. I bought him being a wise Major General, and there are tiny scenes with him that I felt like he really did a great job acting wise. But the problem that I had with this character is that I felt like Major General Beal was very underused in this series. Like, I get that you had like Terry O'Quinn, and again, I haven't seen Lost, so I don't know how big of an actor Terry O'Quinn is, so maybe that's the reason why he wasn't as used as much as I wanted him to be used, because the actor was pretty big. But the thing is that maybe you could have picked an actor that you could use more, because this guy is meant to be like the big guy that's meant to be the big guy that is the leader of the most powerful military force on the planet in this universe, and this is the head of the gang of people that was responsible for why the legendary Rick Grimes was out of the franchise for many years, as well as the leader of the people that has been roaming throughout many of these Walking Dead spin-offs. And with what they do with him in this series, it felt pretty off. And in the final episode, he had a really good scene in the final episode. And it also leads to one of Rick's best moments in the final episode with Major General Beal, and I think that scene was very well done, and I really was getting invested in that scene. But the conclusion they gave him at the end of the series, I felt like was, again, very rushed, and if you're going to go this direction, then you could have at least given him more screen time before this scene, because he spends most of the first 5 episodes in 2 scenes, and all he's doing is just walking around, sitting around, trying to show off his flexible sword, and talking like for 2 minutes in both scenes, and then we get a big moment in the final episode, because think about it, I think this is kind of around a 6-hour long series, and his screen time makes up roughly 20 minutes? And for the big baddie, I felt like you could have done a bit more with him. I mean, Negan in the first 6 episodes of Season 7 definitely had more screen time than this guy. And I felt like with the potential Major General Beal could have had, if you disagree with me that's fine, but I felt like this franchise has kind of underused him. And the final problem I had with The Ones Who Live, mainly in the final episode, again, I think the final episode is taking a lot of the center stage for a lot of the problems. There are a few things that I did not buy, and in order to get these characters to come up on top, they had to add in a few plot conveniences and a few plot holes that, in my opinion, I wasn't able to buy. And again, the way that they conclude a bit of conflict in the final episode, I felt like that the way they did it looked cool, but in reality, I felt like it wouldn't have worked, and it was just a way to get these characters to do these things, and why I felt like that it was really rushed, and I felt like it just didn't work into the show's favour. Because that's a problem with a lot of the spin-offs in The Walking Dead. There are some plot conveniences and plot holes that wouldn't make sense in reality, but with how good that the spin-offs have been after the main series ended, like Dead City, Daryl Dixon, and this series, but the first 5 episodes felt like they were really taking their time. So these plot conveniences and inconsistencies, for the first 5 episodes, I actually thought we were past that. But then they brought it back in the final episode just to make these characters come out on top, and I felt like it didn't work to the show's favour. And for the future of the franchise, again, without spoiling anything, I felt like it did kind of screw the franchise direction a bit. However, despite its many flaws, I still had a blast watching The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live. And despite what I say about the finale, because even if the finale has its biggest flaws, I still thought the finale was good. But not the greatest, but good. But the first 5 episodes I thought were really good. It had some of the... And overall, I think the series, it definitely had some guts, because it puts these characters through rough positions. You get to see them bond a lot to help them really reflect who they are. The cinematography is fantastic, the music is fantastic, it had some of the greatest moments in the Walking Dead franchise, the acting is fantastic, especially from its 2 main leads of Andrew and Denia, and just to see Rick Grimes return to our screens again is a dream come true. And that's why I'm going to give The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live a 4.5 out of 5. I think it was definitely a heck of a series to watch, and if you've watched the main series and want to see the future adventures of Rick Grimes if he does return, this is the show to go to. So I definitely would watch The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live, because despite how you feel about the finale, you'll be glad you watched it anyway, because despite how I feel about the rushed way they concluded the finale, I still was very glad I saw this series. And Rick Grimes, it's been an honour to see you again after all these years. But anyway guys, what do you think of The Walking Dead: The Ones Who Live? Do you love it? Do you hate it? And what is your favourite spin-off in the Walking Dead franchise that you think really pushed the envelope for what great Walking Dead spin-offs can be? Like this one. Let me know in the comment section below. Anyway, there's more videos to come, hope to get more, And I'm Daniel, reviewing movies, TV shows, and doing videos, paying a lot of dedication to the man himself, Rick Grimes, for returning. Thank you, Andrew, and I hope to see you do more in the future. Till then, peace out, man. Rickery Doodah Grimes.